Choisis tes meilleurs prix.
Hello and welcome. Today's project, pillowcases that you can customize for everybody in the family simply through your choice of fabrics. Doesn't take very much fabric either. You'll need about 1 meter for the main body of the pillow. You need about half a meter for the cuff, and for this little strip of trim here, you need 1/4 or 1/3 of a meter. Now, I stayed within the selection of 100% cottons because I like that comfort against my skin. So many choices, though. You can go with novelty prints, you can go with quilting cottons. Just be sure to pre-wash because 100% cotton will shrink and you don't want any heartbreak after you've put effort into something beautiful. Now, the construction method for this pillow is a little bit wonky, but in the end, it delivers a wonderful product because there are no raw edges visible anywhere in the pillow. And that means it'll be wonderful for washing, very durable. Now, for this construction method, I need room, so I'm going to clear the decks. So this is how the pillowcase is constructed. You start with the cuff. I've cut this, the width of the fabric, by 9 inches, and that goes down face up. Then comes the main body of your fabric, and you cut this width of the fabric by 27. Now, the width of the fabric can vary from fabric to fabric, so don't be surprised if your fabrics don't line up exactly. You'll be able to trim that off later, and you want to bring the raw edges together. This part may be a little bit fiddly, but it pays off in the end. Once you've got those two lined up, you're going to add your trim, and that took a little bit of preparation. So what I did with the trim is I cut it width of the fabric by 2 inches, and then I folded it right side out in half and pressed. So I've got width of the fabric, there's my 2 inches folded with the pretty side out. And I'm going to align these raw edges with the raw edges of the other 2 pieces. And you want to take a little bit of time with this to get the edges aligned because it gives you a nice presentation when you're finished. So go ahead and do plenty of pinning. And I usually try to pin every 3 inches or so. Phew, all done. Raw edges aligned. And now we're ready to do the roll that gives this the Burrito Roll name. You're going to take your main fabric, the long one up, and you're just going to roll it. Basically what we're trying to do is get it out of the way so that our cuff is exposed, our cuff fabric. So you're just going to roll it until the cuff fabric is exposed. And you're going to bring this cuff fabric up over the roll and to meet the raw edges on this side. And there's your sushi or your burrito roll. So now we have to go back and repin to align those edges. When you're pinning, you're being very careful just to catch these raw edges, not to catch any of that roll in the center of your main fabric. So we're keeping that roll down the center well away from our pinning. And this is also going to be our seam line. We're going to be sewing a 1/4 inch seam along here. So there's your roll, all pinned, all ready to go down to the machine, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down your pinned line. Now what you end up with is this, and the first time I made one of these pillows, I never thought this was going to work at all, but trust me, it does. I've done my 1/4 inch seam along the raw edges, and now I'm going to pull the insides out. And this is the part I thought was never going to work. I was going, how is that going to come out? But it does. It takes a little bit of tugging, a little bit of easing, and then we're going to have to do a lot of ironing because pressing is really key to what comes next. I chose these colors for our daughter. I think this may find its way into her Christmas stocking. All right, there is the start of our burrito pillowcase. We have our main fabric, we've got our trim, and we've got our cuff. And now what we need to do is give it a very good press so that the steps that come after will produce a really crisp and finished result. Let me get set up for the pressing. All set up now for pressing. I'm actually going to start on the inside of the pillowcase, or the back side at this point. I want to make sure that our seams are crisp, that I'm not pressing any folds into those seams. So I'm going to lightly go all the way along, pressing upwards. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, making sure I'm not pressing any folds into the fabric all the way along. And then once this is crisp, I'm going to go down to my sewing machine and do 2 little jobs. The first thing I'm going to do is run a line of top stitching along this trim here. I just like the trim to be actually secured to the body of the pillow. I think it makes for a neater look, and a neater look coming out of the washing machine too. So I'll do that, a little bit of top stitching, a scant 1/4 inch away from the edge of that trim. The other thing I'm going to do is put the pillowcase together. And to do this, yes, it's counterintuitive, but we're going to work pretty side out. And we're going to do that because we're actually going to create a French seam where the raw edges are encased. So we're going to start wrong sides together. And this is the time when you do any trimming on the sides, top and bottom, to make sure that your edges are even. You will pin and you will run a seam all the way down the side and across the bottom, a scant 1/4 inch. And I say a scant 1/4 inch because what we'll do to encase is flip the pillowcase inside out and encase these raw edges with a generous 1/4 inch seam. So you need to have this one quite narrow so it doesn't get caught in the encasement. I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. So here is that scant 1/4 inch seam all the way along the bottom and down the side of the pillowcase. Now, this is the outside, remember. We have to turn it to the inside and encase those raw edges. So this is another little job you want to take your time with to make sure that you open up the seams properly. To help me with this, especially to poke out the corners, I use a knitting needle, but you might want to use a chopstick or a stiletto, just something that is able to get into the corners but isn't so sharp that it is going to tear the fabric. And you might want at this point to hit it with the iron again, because what you're going to do is again go down the side and along the bottom, this time with a generous 1/4 inch seam, and that will encase your raw edges. And when you're done, this is what it looks like. It looks so lovely when it's finished because No raw edges are exposed on the inside of the pillowcase, and it looks very neat and tidy on the outside as well. Ready to go onto your pillow for a good night's sleep.